You won't believe what just rocked the love and hip-hop world. Rumors of a DNA bombshell have erupted, and this time, Karlie Redd is at the center of the storm. Fans are shocked that Kirk Frost's deepest secret has been revealed, and his alleged paternity claim is now under fire. Emotions ran high when Karlie allegedly waved proof in Rasheeda's face, demanding that the truth be revealed before the next season's cameras roll. Tension increased as Rasheeda, always the defender of her family's honor, vowed she wouldn't remain silent while her husband's legacy collapsed in front of the world. Imagine the scene where Karlie fiercely and tearfully confront Kirk in a heated exchange that left everyone gasping. Producers rushed to record every tense moment for future episodes. Some are supporting Karlie's bold accusations, while others are supporting Kirk's desperate denials. One question remains, though. Is this the biggest betrayal in the final, or is this just another scripted twist? Rasheeda's voice cracked between anger and disbelief as she thundered. If you lied about your own blood, what else are you hiding? From me and from us. As cameras peek behind closed doors and alliances break, viewers are left on the edge of their seats. Brace yourself, okay? Because this DNA drama is about to explode and nothing will ever be the same. The room fell into a stunned silence as Kirk Frost's shaking hand hovered over the Denal report pages, rustling like a frantic heartbeat. The promise of a happy ever after that they had built together now felt like a fragile house of cards, each secret threatening to bring it crashing down. This is it, Karlie's voice cut through the air, quiet but charged with accusation. Holding up the first page, finger pointing to the lab seal. Kirk's face was devoid of color, his usual bravado stripped. Away by the weight of the evidence, he swallowed, his lips parted to form a protest. But the words never came. Her ground arms crossed, eyes blazing with vindication. And the cameras captured every moment of the silence that stretched between them like a loaded gun. Rasheeda stepped forward as if to will it into oblivion, her voice catching like a sob. "Kirk, tell me it's not real," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "Tell me you didn't lie about our child." Kirk's jaw clenched, sweat pounded on his forehead, and he shook his head, his eyes swirling with shame and regret. "I thought I was protecting us," he admitted, his voice barely more than a croak. Karlie's laughter was low and bitter. "Protecting us," she echoed, stepping closer. "You called deception protection." The glare she fixed on Kirk felt like a laser, exposing every flaw behind her. As viewers at home bombarded the live chat with incredulous comments, social media notifications exploded. One comment read, "The family was left divided." Another said, "You manipulated the results before showing them to Rasheeda." Karlie's voice continued to rise. "You changed the numbers, switched the labels. Do you know what that means?" Kirk's eyes flickered angrily. He started, but his words faltered and Rasheeda's breast heaved as she struggled to control her tears. She looked at the sealed envelope Karlie had produced earlier, and now the proof was visible to everyone. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door and Rasheeda's younger sister appeared with a trembling voice. "I got a message from Kirk's ex," she said, her voice shaking. "And she says she saw the unaltered report before he doctored it." The revelation came like a thunderclap, and the cameras turned to record the sister's trembling form as she read. Aloud the ex's text, "I have proof of the original test and it doesn't match what he showed." Karlie quickly reached into her bag and pulled out a flash drive. "Hey, and here's the communication," she said, her voice steady, and she connected it to a nearby monitor. Lines of text scrolled across the screen, messages between Kirk and an unidentified accomplice who plotted the deception in cold detail to ensure Rasheeda never saw the real results. One message read, "We need this to secure our future." Rasheeda's composure broke, and she staggered backward, putting a hand to her mouth to stop. A sob. "How could you?" she cried, her voice cracking. "How could you plan this behind my back?" Kirk's shoulders shook as he lowered his head, and I was afraid. "I didn't do this for drama," Karlie said, her voice softer now but still pointed, "because The world deserves the truth. And you, Rasheeda, deserve to know who you really married, she said, as the camera panned over the gathered friends and family. Their faces etched with hurt and disbelief. Some whispered to Rasheeda, offering her comfort, while others turned away, unable to watch the unraveling of a love story that had once been a symbol of unity. She closed her eyes and recalled the vows they had taken and the dreams they had. Shared, but now each promise felt hollow and echoed in an empty room. Kirk raised his head and hesitantly walked towards Rasheeda, whispering, "I never wanted to hurt you," thinking he was saving us from disappointment. Rasheeda's eyes snapped, back to his anger, and her tear-streaked face demanded, "You think I'd rather live a lie? You think I'd prefer deception over honesty?" He shook his head, lips quivering. "No," he said, "but I didn't know how to tell you the truth." The weight of his confession filled the room, his tone tinted with a mixture of regret and longing. Rasheeda's expression softened for a moment, but the hurt persisted and she looked away, breathing shakily, until a crew member stepped forward and slipped a sealed envelope across the coffee table towards her. They explained that Rasheeda opened the envelope with trembling hands. A handwritten letter from a private investigator detailing Kirk's payments for fabricated dinner reports was found inside. Every penny was tracked down, every lab coat was investigated, and every signature was falsified. The investigation was thorough, and the evidence was indisputable. Rasheeda read the words out loud, her voice shaking with disbelief. He paid for a fake test, manipulated the lab, then replaced the results, and she trailed off, tears falling freely. Now, the floodgates opened, and she collapsed onto the couch, her eyes shining with conviction. "Sometimes the truth is messy," she said, "but it's the only thing we're fighting for." The cameras lingered on his haunted expression, documenting the fall of a man once admired for his devotion in that charged moment. The Frost household stood at a crossroads. A lie of epic proportions had been laid bare, leaving scars on every heart in the room. Alliances shifted, trust shattered, and people at home rallied behind her message. Rasheeda Karlie is a hero, and the family was left divided. Rasheeda's friends gathered around her, offering tissues and whispered condolences. Friends and family had gathered under the pretense of a casual get-together. But everyone knew this was anything but. As the segment came to an end, the promise of redemption hung by a fragile thread. The air crackled with tension. And the looming question was clear. Could this broken family ever find a way back to each other? The Frost residence buzzed with an almost tangible electricity as Kirk Frost entered the room, his gaze flicking nervously to the envelope perched on the coffee table like a ticking time bomb. Every move seemed measured, as though he hoped to postpone the inevitable moment when his carefully constructed world would implode. Karlie stood at the edge of the circle, arms folded, lips pressed into a firm line, and her eyes bore into Kirk with the intensity of a wildfire that would not go out until the truth emerged from the shadows behind her. The production crew exchanged covert glances, their equipment trained on the alternating figures of accuser and accused Rasheeda. She hovered nearby, trembling, as though caught between seeking the truth and fearing its consequences. Her heart raced. The soft hum of the production, Karlie's response was a measured breath before a perfectly aimed arrow, "Because I waited until every possibility was exhausted," she said in a low but unwavering voice. "I verified the lab's legitimacy by cross-checking every signature and tracking down the chain of custody, saying, 'Your lies have traveled far enough. Why bring this out into the open tonight?'" "Kirk," she said in a low voice, "tell me it's not real. Tell me you didn't lie about something so sacred." Rasheeda went nearer, her vision blurred by tears. Kirk's hand trembled as he reached for the envelope, his fingers brushing the paper like a man touching the brink of a cliff. He hesitated, closing his eyes for a moment as though steeling himself against the blow to come. Then, with a resigned exhale, he lifted the lid and withdrew the top page, his gaze flickering over the lab seal that proclaimed legitimacy. The rustle of paper sounded. Deafening in the hush that followed, Kirk's knuckles widened as he pored over the printed results, eyes widening in disbelief. Rasheeda held her breath, every muscle in her body taut with dread. At last, Kirk's shoulders sagged, the weight of truth crushing the bravado he had carried for years. "It's real," he murmured, voice raw. I'm not the dad." A collective gasp echoed through the crowd of witnesses, with some gripping their phones tighter, thumbs hovering over record buttons. Others pressing palms to mouths in muted horror cameras, wearing strange gear that captured the twitch of Kirk's lip, the slick of tears at Rasheeda's eyes, and the steely resolve in Karlie's stance. Fans watching at home bombarded social media with shocked reactions, saying things like, "I can't believe Kirk would do this." The family was split up. When no one was watching, clicked to project the data onto a wide screen. Lines of text ran across exchanges between Kirk and an unidentified accomplice who carefully planned the deception. One message said, "Make sure Rasheeda never sees the unaltered results." Rasheeda's legs crumbled and she fell onto the couch, her tears muffled by the palm covering her lips as the cold, calculated tone of the exchanges struck like a blow to the belly, leaving no space for doubt. Kirk's voice, which had been so authoritative on reality TV, trembled as "I thought I was protecting you," he began, trying to say, "I never wanted you to be hurt." The room trembled with the gravity of her revelation as Rasheeda's sister emerged from the crowd with an envelope tightly clutched in her hand. "There's more," she said, her voice trembling as she produced her own proofs. Text messages from Kirk's former flame, recordings of hushed conversations in which Kirk confessed his fear that the truth would drive Rasheeda away. The audio played through the speakers, and Kirk's own voice confessed, "I'm terrified she'll leave me if she knows the real results." In a moment of silence, as if the air itself would not move until the fallout subsided, Kirk's head began to drop, tears which ran down his cheeks in a silent confession. Rasheeda, staring at him with a mix of anger and sadness, asked, "How could you lie about our child? How could you have built your life on lies?" she sobbed. Karlie approached Rasheeda and offered a helping hand, saying softly, "You deserve the truth." Rasheeda accepted the hand, and for a brief moment, the two women formed an production assistant handed Rasheeda a sealed envelope from a private investigator with shaking fingers. Rasheeda opened it to reveal a file of invoices, lab receipts, and forged signatures. Every step Kirk had taken to orchestrate the deception was documented in agonizing detail. The invoices traced payments to a shadowy lab. The receipts verified doctored results, and the signatures matched Kirk's unmistakable scrawl. The evidence was incontrovertible, and Kirk went to the ground with his hands clasped together. Production crew paused to allow the raw emotion to unfold unfiltered, knowing that this was television gold, but also realizing that the pain unfolding before their lenses was unstoppable. Rasheeda stood up from the couch, wiping her cheeks with trembling hands, and whispered, "I loved you," knowing that love built on lies is no love at all. She stared at Kirk's eyes, which were blazing despite her tears. Kirk looked up, his lashes glistening with guilt and regret. The tension in the room was so thick that it felt like a physical barrier. Karlie watched from the side, satisfaction tempered by empathy. She had pursued the truth, but she hadn't foreseen the human wreckage in its wake. Akaja's mother came forward, her voice shaking with pain and anger. She reprimanded Kirk, saying, "You promised you'd always be honest, but instead you used deception." Kirk didn't defend himself this time. Instead, he just closed his eyes and nodded, eclipsing Shane's features as the confrontation wound down. The cameras laying on each face captured the aftermath of a betrayal that would reverberate throughout the upcoming season. Producers signaled for a cut, but the moment lingered in the charged silence, each participant caught in the private fallout of public exposure. Fans watching at home would later replay the scene, dissect every glance and every tremor, debating Kirk's Karlie held the mantle of truth-bearer. Her crusade complete, but tinged with the sorrow of a friendship, irrevocably altered the saga that began with a simple envelope. Even as lights dinged and cameras rolled into the next scene, one question loomed large. Could a love betrayed this deeply ever be repaired? Motives and Rasheeda's future in that tense living room alliances had shifted. Trust had shattered, and the promise of redemption hung by the thinnest of threads. Kirk remained slumped on the floor, a man undone by his own fear and deceit. In a state of stunned disarray, Rasheeda withdrew to the comfortable armchair by the window and wrapped her arms around herself as though she were trying to hold together the pieces of her broken world. Kirk remained on the floor, head bowed, hands clasped tightly over the envelope that lay open on the hardwood. Karlie hovered nearby, her expression changing from triumph to concern as she watched the two people at the center of her crusade. The cameras continued to record every tremor in Kirk's stance and every quiver of Rasheeda's shoulders, as well as the heavy silence of the room, interrupted only by the soft hum of equipment. Friends and family exchanged uncomfortable looks, unsure of whether to approach or give space. Rasheeda's best friend, who had always been there, rose reluctantly and offered a trembling tissue, saying, "You deserve better," she whispered, kneeling beside Rasheeda. Rasheeda accepted the tissue with shaking fingers, her tears unabated outside. The sun dipped low, slanting through the curtains and casting long shadows on the floor, a stark visual reminder that even the brightest days can end in darkness. Karlie cleared her throat softly, drawing attention. "I know you're hurting," she said, voice gentle, "but you both need to talk this through." Rasheeda raised her head to meet Karlie's red-rimmed eyes and asked, "What else can I say?" She asked in a voice. "Please," he said, in a voice rife with guilt, "help me make this right." Brittle Kirk raised his head, eyes watering. It's the production team signaled for a brief break, and the cameras briefly stopped rolling after the emotional whirlwind. The sudden stillness felt jarring as the producer approached, offering water and gently asking if the crew could step out for a moment. Kirk nodded numbly and rose unsteadily, while Rasheeda remained seated with her hands shaking over the tissue as she tried to steady her breath. Karlie stayed by her side the entire time. Kirk whispered to his longtime confidant, who had been by his side for years, "I didn't think it would go this far." His voice was barely above a whisper, and he confessed, "I thought I could control it and manage the fallout." His friend put a hand on his shoulder, saying gently, "You underestimated the power of truth," she said gently. "Now you have to face the consequences." Kirk nodded, swallowing hard as he prepared to return to the scene of his betrayal. Back in the living room, Rasheeda stood up, adrenaline and anguish mingle in her chest, and she wiped away her tears, determined to confront Kirk face to face. The cameras started to roll again at that point, capturing her first steps towards him. Karlie moved aside to give room, but she kept a close watch on the scene as it was happening. And the hip-hop fans watching live held their breath, sensing the delicate balance between reconciliation and the final fracture. Rasheeda stood over Kirk, who was still sitting on the floor, and bowed, her voice, though it was shaky, but it was strong. "You owe me the explanation of a lifetime," she said softly, and Kirk met her gaze, her eyes shining with regret. "I'm so sorry," he started, but I was afraid his voice broke. Rasheeda held up a hand to silence him, and Kirk took a deep breath, gathering courage. "You trust me, but if I wasn't everything you deserved..." The admission hung in the air, raw and vulnerable. Rasheeda's features softened for a moment, but the wound remained fresh. "You think a lie could protect me?" she whispered, and Kirk trembled as tears fell down his cheeks. "I thought it would," he admitted, "but I see now it only destroyed us." Rasheeda's tears fell again, but this time there was no anger, only deep sadness. "I don't know if I can trust you again," she confessed. The tension echoed through the room as guests silently absorbed every heartbreaking word. Karlie moved to Rasheeda's side and gently placed a hand on her back. "Whatever you decide, you deserve honesty. Deserve honesty," she said quietly. Rasheeda nodded, unsure if forgiveness was possible, but knowing that she needed clarity before moving forward. However, Rasheeda's cousin suddenly burst into the room, clutching her phone, and said, "I've found." Something else, panting an email from Kirk to his lab contact arranging payment. She showed the screen an email trail detailing invoices, times, amounts, and amounts. The cold, businesslike tone of the correspondence accentuated the betrayal, and Kirk fell to his knees, burrowing his face in his hands, overwhelmed by the depth of his own deception. Each line was read aloud like a dagger payment sent results to be manipulated to ensure no discrepancies. Her voice cracked as she finished, turning away tears streaming freely. "This was all planned." Kirk nodded, unable to meet her eyes. Living room felt like a courtroom judgment from a woman he still loved but could no longer recognize. The cameras closed in for close-ups, showing Kirk's tear-stained face, Rasheeda's anguished profile, and Karlie's unwavering vigil. At that moment, every view as the lights went down and the crew got ready to cut, Rasheeda took one last look at Kirk. Her eyes were tired. But she said, "I need time. Time to heal, time to decide if there's a future for us." Kirk's shoulders shook with silent sobs as she turned and left, walking away, Karlie matching her stride. The door closed softly behind them, leaving Kirk alone in the middle of the room, surrounded by the wreckage of his choices. The screen faded to black, the ideal setting for the next explosive episode in a tale of D's, heartbreak, and the eternal question of whether truth can ever truly set them free. Kirk was left alone on the floor with the envelope of the fabricated dinner in our results in his trembling hand. The cameras recorded every moment of his silent agony, including the way his shoulders heaved with each ragged breath, the glint of tears on his cheekbones, and the hollow echo of his own disbelief outside the window. Moments later, Rasheeda returned to the center of the room, flanked by Karlie and her sister. Their faces were set with hard resolve. Kirk looked up, and her eyes were bloodshot, and her voice was barely a whisper. "I know you're right to hate me." Rasheeda's gaze softened just enough to catch him off guard, as she sat on the couch, arm keeping her distance but not turning away. "Hate isn't the issue," she said quietly. Karlie took a tablet out of her bag and began scrolling through the messages she had discovered. She then handed it to Rasheeda, who studied Kirk's words in a small digital font. "We'll fix it before she finds out, trust me. Don't let the truth ruin our story," she said, her voice shaking with pain as she read each line aloud. "You planned this," she said, her eyes glossing her voice. Every lie was calculated. Bowed his head in shame. The room felt cold as Rasheeda rose, pacing slowly, and friends and family drifted to the edges, unsure whether to intervene or respect her space. Kirk struggled to follow her, finally rising unsteadily, saying, "Please," his voice cracking. "Let me explain." Rasheeda halted, back to him. "Go on," she said, tone flat. Kirk took a breath, gathering the courage to speak the truth he had hidden for too long. Said in a low voice, "I met someone before I met you. We had a dinner test together, but the results were inconclusive. I panicked and felt like a fraud if I couldn't prove what I wanted most, that I could be a father." Rasheeda let the words hang, searching his face for honesty. Kirk swallowed. "When we learned about our baby, I told myself that the time was right to bring up the old test because I thought that if I could just prove it, we'd be safe and content, as if our future were assured." His admission reverberated in the quiet room, punctuated only by the hum of the ventilation. Rasheeda's breath caught, so she wrapped her arms around herself again rather than speaking to me. "I was afraid you'd leave me," Kirk admitted, closing his eyes as the weight of her words settled in his chest. "I'm afraid that without proof, you walk away." Rasheeda shook her head slowly, saying, "Love isn't proven by papers," with tears streaming down her face. "It's built on trust." Karlie stepped forward, her voice gentle, saying, "We all make mistakes. But some mistakes cross lines. You can't. You lied to the woman you vowed to protect," she said, looking at Kirk. Kirk nodded, breathing shallowly. "I know," he said, "and I'm ready to face whatever comes." Rasheeda stood silently for a moment, her eyes fixed on Kirk as if weighing every ounce of devotion she had ever felt. The room seemed to hold its breath when she finally exhaled and sank to the edge of the couch, arms braced on her knees. "I need time," she said in a firm but broken voice. "I can't just snap back to life, who we were." Kirk knelt before her, head bowed, and said, "Take all the time you need," whispering, "I'll wait." Outside, the cameras cut to commercial and behind the scenes. Producers whispered over footage already planning next week's teaser, which featured a private conversation between Rasheeda and her closest confidants debating whether to stay or leave. Fans watching live erupted with online speculation about whether Rasheeda would forgive Kirk and whether their marriage could survive this betrayal. Trending hashtags, #Nexposed, #FrostFamilyCrisis, #RasheedaAsked. When the feed shifted, Rasheeda sat by herself in front of the camera. Her eyes were tearful, but she was fierce and determined. She told the camera, "This isn't just my story. It's a warning. Secrets can destroy the ones you love. If you see red flags, speak up. Don't let fear chain you to a lie." Her words echoed poignantly with the chaos that had broken out behind closed doors. Karlie came over and gave a supportive nod. "You're stronger than you know." Rasheeda managed a small, appreciative smile. "Thank you," she whispered, and they left Kirk sitting in the gloom of the living room. The cameras panned to capture his lone figure, a man undone by his own fears. The envelope of lies spread open at his feet like a torn veil as evening fell and the Frosty household fell into a state of uneasy silence. Rasheeda withdrew to her room where her sister joined her phones off, but her heart was heavy. Kirk lingered in the living room, scrolling through fan comments, some of which offered support, while others were harsh in calling him a liar. He let the phone slip from his hand, leaving his peers to stain his cheeks once more in the hallways. Shadows. Karlie stopped outside Kirk's door, took a deep breath, knocked softly, and Kirk opened it, his eyes flickering with surprise. She closed the door behind her and said, "I wish things were different," in an unsteady voice. The episode cut to a preview of the next installment. A tense family dinner where Rasheeda's parents would weigh in a surprise twist as another secret surfaced, and Kirk's quest to win back her. She thought of Kirk's tearful apology, Karlie's unwavering loyalty, and the friends who had rallied at her side. She knew forgiveness wouldn't be earned in a single moment, but would be earned day by day. Her fingers touched the spot where Kirk had once held her hand in promise, and the memory shimmered as fragile as a spider's web. As the dust settles on this jaw-dropping revelation, one thing is certain. The bonds of trust can shatter with the flick of a falsified page, and no secret stays buried forever. You've seen Kirk's desperate attempts to hide behind a fabricated dinner report, and you've seen Rasheeda alone in a candlelit room. Her silhouette framed by the flicker of flame and shadow, eyes closed as if in prayer. The credits rolled over. The music's solemn notes, the screen gradually faded to black, leaving the audience's hearts racing. Unwavering pursuit of the unvarnished truth and Rasheeda's heartbreaking journey from love to betrayal. But the story doesn't end here. Will Kirk be able to win back Rasheeda's trust? Or has he destroyed the bridge beyond repair? Will Rasheeda be able to move past this deep wound and come out stronger? Or will the shadow of deceit linger in every glance and every whispered doubt? The next chapter promises even more twists. Whispered alliances, unexpected confessions, and the high stakes fallout that could redefine every relationship in the Frost household. You won't want to miss a single moment as loyalties are tested. New evidence comes to light, and the question of forgiveness hangs in the balance. If this story has you on the edge of your seat, hit the like button to let us know you're hooked. And don't forget to stay tuned, because the Frost family's roller coaster ride is far from over. With cameras rolling and emotions running hotter than ever, we want to hear every theory, prediction, and bit of drama you think is coming next. Subscribe so you never miss the explosive developments ahead. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Rasheeda can forgive Kirk, or should she walk away for good? Which secret revelation shocked you the most? What outcome are you rooting for? Episode will reveal even more, so please hit the subscribe button and ring the bell for let us know in the comments if you would want to get notifications and join us as we explore the aftermath of the Dina expose. If you were in Rasheeda's position, how would you respond? Would you confront the falsehood, demand the truth, or turn away? Kirk and Rasheeda's fate will always be in doubt, and only you can assist in determining what comes.